Major federal budget cuts almost here. Will Mid-Missouri schools feel the effects?
Columbia and Jefferson City will also take a hit from the billion-dollar cuts.
And Fayette tries to recover after a roof collapse. KOMU 8 News First at 5 starts now.
This is KOMU 8 News First at 5.
Lawmakers in Washington admit $85 billion in automatic spending cuts may take effect by midnight. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Reek.
And I'm Katie Brennan. President Obama held a meeting to address the cuts today, but Republicans say there will not be a deal. NBC's Danielle Lee has more on the impacts of these cuts.
At the White House, the first serious sit-down between President Obama and congressional leaders to avoid the sequester came this morning. In Washington, I'm Danielle Lee, NBC News.
Senator Claire McCaskill announced today that she would like to introduce an amendment about the looming U.S. budget cuts. Since Congress can't seem to come up with an agreement on what cuts to make, McCaskill says it would be fair for members of the Senate and the House to cut their own pay.
So if we end up having to tell a federal employee you're only going to get a paycheck for 4 days a week, then we should only take the same kind of pay. So we're going to try to see if we can't get the Senate and the House to agree to cut our pay the way federal employees might have to be cut.
Now here's what the potential budget cuts mean for Mid-Missouri. One of the biggest cuts is to military spending. In Missouri, about 8,000 civilian Department of Defense employees would be temporarily laid off. This would reduce pay by about $40 million. Missouri Army operations would be cut by $56 million. Air Force operations in Missouri would be cut by $14 million. Teachers and schools could lose nearly $12 million in funding, and that puts about 600 teaching jobs at risk. Also, about 60 fewer schools would get funding. Finally, Missouri would lose funding for education for children with disabilities. Now, these cuts could certainly affect two Mid-Missouri airports. The FAA plans to close more than 100 air traffic control towers across the country. Columbia Regional and Jefferson City Memorial are on that list.
Well, we don't think it's going to have any immediate effect on flights. What will happen if the air traffic control tower at Columbia is taken offline is that pilots will need to be a bit more vigilant in what they're doing, but they will work through an air traffic control center known as Mizzou Approach, which is based out of Springfield, Missouri.
SAP says Columbia Regional already works with Mizzou Approach during times of heavy traffic at the airport and is confident with its technology.
More on the weekend forecast, which does look better. Coming up on KOMU 8 News First at 5.
Thank you, Doppler Dave. Now, things are slowly getting back to normal in Fayette after the second floor of a building collapsed from the weight of snow in recent storms. Fortunately, the floor was vacant, so there were no injuries. A Fayette official says she doesn't know when all the debris will be cleared off the road, but a tenant of the damaged lower floor says she won't let this get her down.
As soon as possible, the contractors are working and going to work steadily until they get it cleaned up and get the highway clear.
I think that we will perhaps even get a bigger building. I don't want to say better because this one has served us well on the square. We hope to keep the furniture part of the business on the square.
Malone says Route 240 right next to that building is now clear enough for two-way traffic.
Several Mid-Missouri roofs have caved in this week because of the heavy snow. Now the Walmart on Grindstone is closed as a precaution. KOMU tried calling Walmart, but the store has not returned our calls. Both Sam's Club and Walmart on Conley Road are open. They were closed temporarily yesterday because of getting snow off the roof.
One researcher claims Missouri's gun-friendly policies have increased gun violence. His study shows that in Missouri, homicides have increased by 25% since 2008. Before the new gun policy went into effect in 2007, people had to get a permit and a background check to buy a gun, even with private sales. This comes as Republican lawmakers can consider increasing access to guns.
A Florida man woke up from his sleep to a deadly surprise.
And residents from New Jersey gathered today to begin a project in honor of the Sandy Hook victims. KOMU 8's Giselle McGilligan has these stories and more in your First Nation report.
Thank you. A Florida man is missing today after sinkhole swallowed part of his house. Authorities say the man was asleep when the hole under his house collapsed. Officials say the man is probably dead, but will not be able to confirm that until the area is safe and the rescue teams can look for him. This sinkhole measures about 20 feet deep. NASA's X rocket blasted into orbit today. The rocket is on its way to the International Space Station for a supply mission. It's delivering more than a ton of goods like fruit to astronauts in space. The creator says he hopes to fly people abroad a model of the rocket by 2015. A community in New Jersey worked together to build a playground in honor of the 26 victims of the Sandy Hook massacre. After the groundbreaking work began on the Shoreline Playground, children did most of the work and encouraged other community members to join in on the project. It's the first of 26 planned new town playgrounds along the East Coast. That's it for your First Nation report.
Catholic cardinals met today in Rome to discuss picking a new pope. Yesterday, Vatican leaders sealed the papal apartment. It will not be reopened until a new pope is elected. The Vatican says the date of the conclave will come later. Japanese researchers found a fish with the highest level of radiation since the explosion at the Fukushima nuclear plant 2 years ago. Researchers say the fish has more than 5,000 times the government radiation limit. Scientists say the discovery may mean that radiation is still leaking from the plant. Most fishing is banned in that area. Protesters gathered at the Berlin Wall today to protest knocking the wall down. Historical preservation authorities gave permission to remove about 70 feet of the east side gallery wall to build a road to a new luxury apartment complex. Workers removed only one section of the wall before protesters stopped them.
Are some women getting a serious surgery for no reason?
What doctors have to say about this loaded question.
And a sheriff wants to charge his inmates for food and housing. Find out what you had to say about it in today's talk.
And we're very optimistic that the change in the weather will give us a break from this very cloudy, dreary winter weather in the Missouri. That's coming up next on KOMU 8 News, first at 5.
And you are looking live over Highway 63. The traffic moving right along in both directions. This is KOMU 8 News, first at 5. Coverage you can count on.
Welcome back, everyone. Should women with advanced breast cancer have a double mastectomy? This question is fueling debates among doctors and breast cancer patients. Doctors say women who have cancer in both breasts should have the surgery, but for other women, the choice is up to them. Doctors say more women with breast cancer are deciding to have both breasts removed to avoid future complications. An EpiPen could save someone's life during an allergic reaction, but researchers say overweight children could face problems with getting the medicine into their system. Doctors say obese children have too much fatty tissue, so the EpiPen is not very effective. Luckily, doctors say that if the medicine is injected into the lower thigh, it may be able to work. The toxic BPA chemical is causing more problems for children. Researchers from Columbia University now say BPA may be the reason childhood asthma has increased. BPA is commonly found in canned goods, store receipts, and baby bottles. Doctors say exposing babies to low doses of BPA could cause wheezing and asthma by the time they're 5. All mental illnesses seem different, but researchers say they may stem from the same genetic source. Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and autism come from the same DNA regions and share genetic mutations. Researchers say these problems make it more likely someone will develop a mental illness.
An Arizona jail is making prisoners literally pay for their crimes. That's coming up in today's talk. We had a story about an Arizona sheriff planning to charge inmates $1 a day beginning next month due to budget cuts. Sheriff Joe Arpaio of Maricopa County says meals used to cost 60 cents a day. Now it's gone up as the jail has to purchase more food. The plan is to take money from the inmates' bank accounts used to purchase items from the jail. Those who run out of money would still be fed, though. Maricopa County has the third largest jail system in the country and appears to be the first to make this sort of move. So we asked you, what do you think about inmates paying for their food? This is what you had to say in today's talk. John says, why should I pay for their food and housing? I am not the one who made the choice to break the law, and I already pay room and board for my family. Wendy says, I pay more for my child to eat one meal a day at school. Of course they should have to pay for their food. Charge them more. And Corey says, I don't think people realize what it costs per month to keep someone in jail. For nonviolent drug offenders, I would like to see them released and kept at home being monitored. They would have to pay for the ankle monitors.
One deer and her fawn were stuck on thin ice for hours, and we'll tell you how a couple of Canadians had to think outside the box to rescue that little deer. Oh, very true.
Coming up on KOMU 8 News at 6, how victims of crime in Missouri could struggle due to these budget cuts.
And we'll take a look at what factors play a role when doing a controversial local story in our Today's Your View. And a helicopter rescued a deer and her fawn after they were trapped on thin ice in Canada. The fawn bolted to shore when the helicopter first arrived on the scene, and in a complicated maneuver, the pilot used the downdraft of the chopper to push the deer to shore. A retired biologist spotted the doe struggling for hours to get on her feet while the fawn stayed close by her side. What a dedicated kid. The ice was too thin to try to rescue the two by foot, so the man notified the Department of Natural Resources to send the helicopter to help.
And more good news. I think the flurries will come to an end tonight.
So it just keeps adding up, huh?
Did you see that stuff falling down on Danielle McCarthy? That looked miserable.
Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Better weather ahead, I hope.